The most dangerous threat to your child's emotional survival isn't a stranger, a screen, or a sudden illness. It is a loving, smiling face offering you a piece of advice in your own living room. Right now, across the world, a silent, invisible war is tearing families apart. We are living through an unprecedented explosion of generational estrangement. It is a phenomenon so widespread, yet so deeply steeped in shame, that almost no one talks about it openly. But look around. Look closely at your peer group. Modern parents are doing the unthinkable. They are looking at the people who raised them, the people who bathed them, fed them, and loved them, and they are closing the door. Forever. For generations, the golden rule of survival was simple. It takes a village. You are told from the moment you see those two pink lines that you will desperately need this village to survive the sleepless nights and the grueling marathon of early parenthood. But nobody warned you about the hidden cost of admission. Nobody told you what to do when the village demands your total submission in exchange for its support. You invite them into your home expecting a lifeline. Instead, you get a tripwire. It usually happens on a random Tuesday afternoon. You are exhausted, holding your newborn, trying to follow the latest, heavily researched safety guidelines you've meticulously studied for months. And then, it comes. A casual dismissal of your rules. A roll of the eyes. A seemingly harmless comment passed off as traditional wisdom. A little whiskey on the gums will stop the crying. We put you to sleep on your stomach with heavy blankets and you survived. You're holding that baby too much, you're going to spoil him. To an outsider, these comments look like minor differences of opinion. But in your body, it feels like a biological alarm bell. Your chest tightens. Your heart begins a rhythmic, panicked thudding against your ribs. You are suddenly trapped in a terrifying paradox. The deeply ingrained conditioning to defer to your elders is violently crashing into the primal, ferocious urge to protect your child. You realize, in a flash of cold clarity, that what was framed as help is actually a quiet, relentless assault on your authority. And worse, it is a blatant disregard for your child's boundaries. This isn't just about sleep schedules or feeding methods. It is about an absolute refusal to see you as a competent adult. It is the agonizing realization that the people who demand unconditional respect are completely incapable of offering it in return. You thought you were bringing your baby into a loving family. Instead, you find yourself stationed on the front lines of a psychological battlefield, fighting a daily insurgency against the very people who gave you life. Every modern, evidence-based boundary you attempt to enforce is mocked as a ridiculous trend. The guilt is crushing. The exhaustion is absolute. You are told you are overreacting, that you are being difficult, that you are actively destroying the family. But you know the truth. You are watching a cycle attempt to repeat itself, and you are desperately trying to build a wall before it infects your child. But why is this happening right now? Why is the generation that championed family first suddenly finding themselves blocked, ignored, and erased from their grandchildren's lives? The answer doesn't begin with a massive, screaming argument. It begins with a single, completely ordinary sentence spoken in your living room. You turned out fine. 4 words. 4 words that serve as the ultimate weapon of mass invalidation in the modern living room. When your parents say this, they think they are offering reassurance. They believe they are defending their legacy. But what you hear is a profound refusal to evolve. You hear the slamming of a door on decades of scientific advancement. There is a massive, tectonic fault line dividing how you were raised and how you are choosing to raise your child. This is the generational collision. Your parents raised you under an authoritarian survival paradigm. Success was measured by compliance, convenience, and absolute obedience. Children were meant to be seen and not heard. Big emotions were treated as acts of rebellion, inconveniences to be instantly quieted, punished, or isolated behind a closed bedroom door. You are operating on a fundamentally different frequency. You are practicing evidence-based, emotionally aware parenting. You are not trying to raise a convenient child. You are trying to raise a resilient, emotionally regulated human being. You read the neurological studies. You know that leaving a baby to cry alone in the dark spikes cortisol to toxic levels. You know that demanding blind obedience doesn't teach respect, it only teaches a child to hide their mistakes from you out of fear. When you attempt to explain this, you are rarely met with curiosity. You are met with deep, defensive contempt. We didn't need all these fancy rules. You're coddling them. In my day, we just did what we were told. These statements are not just differing philosophies. They are insidious, daily micro-invalidations. It happens when a grandparent purposefully sneaks your toddler sugar right before bedtime just to prove your routines are rigid. It happens when they force a physical hug or a kiss on a shrinking child, entirely overriding your careful lessons on bodily autonomy. It happens when they openly mock you for kneeling down to validate a toddler's meltdown instead of issuing a loud threat. This relentless friction makes you feel entirely insane. The gaslighting is so subtle, yet so pervasive, that you begin to question your own reality. Are you being too sensitive? Are you unfairly gatekeeping your child? Are you actively destroying the village you are supposed to be overwhelmingly grateful for? No. You are doing something heroic, and deeply exhausting. You are trying to dismantle generations of authoritarian conditioning in real time, while profoundly sleep-deprived. You are asking for the absolute bare minimum, that they respect your authority as a parent. You are asking them to update their worldview to protect the physical and emotional safety of the grandchild they claim to love above all else. But the resistance is deafening. Because for them to accept your methods, they would have to confront a terrifying, deeply painful possibility. They would have to admit that some of the things they did to you caused lasting harm. To protect their own fragile egos, they choose to attack your boundaries instead. But as these minor infractions begin to multiply, a dark shift occurs. What starts as a simple difference in parenting styles rapidly mutates into something far more dangerous, a psychological battleground where the ultimate casualty isn't just family harmony, but something you can never get back. There is a very specific, agonizing type of guilt reserved for the adult child who dares to tell their parents, no. It is not a quiet feeling. It is a suffocating, heavy blanket that settles over your chest, making it hard to breathe. For decades, you have been marinating in a singular, culturally enforced truth: family is everything. Blood is thicker than water. Honor thy father and mother. You were conditioned, from your very first memories, to prioritize the comfort of the adults around you over your own intuition. You were taught that familial loyalty is an absolute debt you owe simply for being born. So, when you finally try to draw a line in the sand, your nervous system violently revolts. The guilt whispers in the dark, telling you that you are a terrible daughter. An ungrateful son. It tells you that they are getting older, that you are being too harsh, that you are breaking their hearts. But the escalation in your living room is undeniable. What began as subtle micro-invalidations has now mutated into active, deliberate sabotage. You are no longer just dealing with a difference in opinion, you are dealing with a blatant refusal of consent. You tell them, clearly and calmly, not to kiss the newborn on the face because of the very real, biological threat of respiratory viruses. They wait until you turn your back, do it anyway, and smirk at you, calling you paranoid. You explicitly ask them not to discuss weight or diet culture around your impressionable daughter. At the very next family dinner, they casually pinch her waist and comment on how much she is eating. You lay down a hard boundary about never using physical discipline, and they loudly joke to your toddler, right in front of you, "You better be glad your mom is here, or I'd give you a good smack." This is the exact anatomy of a rupture. It is rarely one catastrophic, cinematic explosion. It is a death by 1,000 cuts. It is the chilling realization that your boundaries are not merely being crossed, they are being actively mocked as a sport. They are testing the electric fence, over and over again, just to see if the voltage is real. They are demanding to know who holds the ultimate authority in your child's life. And suddenly, the fog clears. The crushing guilt is replaced by a cold, sobering terror. You are staring down an impossible choice. You can continue to endure this. You can keep swallowing your anxiety, biting your tongue, and letting them trample your rules just to avoid an argument. You can appease your parents and maintain the shiny, exhausting illusion of the happy, multigenerational village. But you suddenly realize exactly what that peace costs. You realize that keeping the peace is actually just a transfer of pain. You are taking the discomfort of enforcing a boundary and transferring it directly onto your child's developing nervous system. If you teach your child that their grandparents are allowed to ignore rules, override bodily autonomy, and dismiss their feelings, you are teaching them that love requires submission. You are teaching them that it is entirely acceptable for family to hurt them, as long as it keeps the adults comfortable. You look at your child, innocent and entirely dependent on you to be their shield. And you realize that you cannot protect your parents' fragile egos and protect your child's psychological development at the same time. The math simply does not work. One of them has to be sacrificed. The breaking point finally arrives, forcing a choice no child ever wants to make about their own parents. But when that door finally closes, an entirely new, terrifying reality begins, one that modern psychology is only just now beginning to understand. When you finally close the door, the silence in your home is deafening. Society will be quick to judge you. Aunts, uncles, and lifelong family friends will flood your inbox, accusing you of being petty, cruel, and selfish. They will tell you that holding a grudge is toxic, and that life is simply too short to cut off your own flesh and blood. But you are not holding a grudge. You are holding a boundary. And modern science completely validates your decision. To understand what you have just done, you must look past the social etiquette of family dynamics and look directly at neurobiology. Generational trauma is not just a trendy internet buzzword. It is a highly documented, tangible, physiological inheritance. It is passed down through the physical wiring of the nervous system. When a child is raised in an environment of chronic invalidation, fear, or emotional volatility, their brain physically adapts to survive it. Their baseline for stress permanently alters. They learn that love is dangerous, conditional, and intrinsically tied to compliance. Your parents were likely handed this dysregulated nervous system by their parents. They survived it, but because they refused to examine it, they unknowingly handed it directly to you. You have spent your entire adult life attempting to untangle that exact knot. You have spent thousands of hours learning how to self-regulate, how to process your triggers, and how to heal so you don't repeat their mistakes. When you allow a family member to repeatedly violate your boundaries and dismiss your child's emotional reality, you are reintroducing that exact same neurobiological toxin back into your home. You are allowing the transmission of trauma to bypass your healing and land squarely on your child's shoulders. By enforcing radical distance, you are not acting out of malice. You are executing the ultimate act of biological protection. You are acting as a human shield. Every time you refuse to let an older family member gaslight your toddler, you are literally protecting the structural development of your child's prefrontal cortex. Every time you reject authoritarian fear tactics in your living room, you are keeping your baby's cortisol levels stable. You are teaching their developing nervous system that they are safe, that their voice matters, and that they possess absolute ownership over their own body. You are the circuit breaker. The electricity of generational dysfunction has surged down the family tree for decades, burning through relationships and self-worth, destroying everything in its path. It traveled from your grandparents, to your parents, and directly into you. But it stops right here. It stops with you. The monumental weight of this realization is exactly why your daily exhaustion is so profound. You are doing the emotional heavy lifting for 3 generations at once. You are grieving the childhood you deserved, parenting the child in front of you, and actively fending off the unhealed trauma of the adults who brought you into this world. You have the science on your side, you have drawn the absolute boundary, and you have successfully shielded your child's developing brain. But what happens when the adrenaline wears off and the silence sets in? Because the hardest part of cutting ties isn't the final argument. It's what you have to survive the morning after. The morning after you sever the tie, you will wake up to a house that feels profoundly different. It will feel terrifyingly small. You will look at your phone, and there will be no unread messages. No passive-aggressive check-ins. No guilt trips waiting for you in the notification tray. There is only a vast, uncharted quiet. And in that quiet, you will have to face the most unexpected, agonizing phase of this entire journey. #### The grief of the ghost village. You are not just mourning the loss of your parents. You are mourning the total collapse of a fantasy. You are grieving the village you were promised, the one you spent your whole life hoping would eventually materialize. * You are mourning the grandmother who embraces your boundaries. * You are mourning the grandfather who delights in your child's big emotions. * You are mourning the safe, warm, multi-generational holidays that you see plastered across social media. Letting go of the parents you actually have means finally accepting that the parents you desperately wanted are never going to arrive. It is a profound, deeply unique type of bereavement, because the people you are mourning are still alive. This grief will try to trick you. On a difficult, sleep-deprived Tuesday night, when your toddler is screaming and you are entirely depleted, the isolation will feel unbearable. A dangerous, whispering thought will creep into your mind, * maybe I made a mistake. Maybe a toxic village is better than no village at all, *. Do not believe the lie. An absent village is exhausting. But a toxic village is destructive. Exhaustion can be remedied with a nap, a hired babysitter, or a quiet weekend. But the psychological damage of an invalidating environment requires a lifetime of agonizing therapy to unlearn. You have bravely chosen physical exhaustion over emotional devastation. # The architecture of a new bloodline. As the weeks turn into months, a subtle, beautiful miracle begins to happen in your home. The phantom anxiety that used to paralyze you before every family visit begins to evaporate. Your nervous system, no longer bracing for constant impact, finally returns to its natural baseline. You will start to notice a profound shift in your child. They are calmer. They are thriving. And most importantly, they are looking at you with complete, unbroken trust. They know that when they are with you, they are unconditionally safe. By removing the toxic elements from your life, you have created a vacuum. And into that empty space, something genuine can finally grow. You begin to curate a chosen family. You slowly surround your child with friends, neighbors, and mentors who deeply align with your values. You build a village not out of an archaic genetic obligation, but out of mutual respect, safety, and authentic love. You are no longer just surviving your family dynamics. You are actively architecting an entirely new bloodline. You are replacing the inherited legacy of fear and compliance with a breathtaking new inheritance of respect, autonomy, and radical emotional safety. You are becoming the ancestor that future generations of your family will look back on and thank. It is the hardest, most utterly draining thing you will ever do, but it is the most vital, heroic work of your lifetime. Your child's peace is worth the exact cost of your parents' comfort. You have broken the cycle and built an impenetrable safe harbor for your child. But as they grow, and the inevitable day comes when they look up at you and ask why they don't have a grandfather or grandmother like the other kids, what exactly will you tell them?